organizations, as too many people still remain in prison or under community surveillance or supervision for marijuana offenses. If you've been listening, then you have heard that Virginia first wanted to commercialize sales in 2024, but might speed that up. So we want to remind lawmakers and decision makers that you, the public, that our loved ones inside deserve the same urgency that consumers are demanding to get their hands on legal weed. With speeding up the market, the social equity licenses is now at risk. We will have to wait to see what lengths Virginia will go to protect social equity inclusion. Speaking of inclusion, Marijuana Justice has been promoting the idea of guaranteed income program, with 30% of tax revenue going into the Cannabis Equity Reinvestment Fund. Our Coins Not Cups campaign continues as we watch to see how these funds in the upcoming commercial market are used to reinvest to individuals in the areas over-policed and most impacted by marijuana prohibition. And last but not least, we want to protect our future by protecting our future leaders, our youth. We have a wonderful speaker today, Valerie Slater, who will be joining us to talk about youth decriminalization. As Virginia legalized marijuana, the penalties for youth continue to build a path towards cages and not care. But it's not just marijuana that traps our youth. The system entirely needs to change with how we approach our young folks. And today, Valerie Slater is here to talk to us more about it. So I'm going to introduce our speaker. Valerie Slater is a juvenile justice attorney and executive director of Rise for Youth organization, advocating for the rights of youth and families facing justice system involvement or engaged with other systems charged with care of Virginia's youth. Valerie earned her Juris Doctors from University of Richmond School of Law and her Bachelor's from Colorado State University. Valerie is a fierce advocate for children and brings to her work an unwavering commitment to strengthening youth and communities, led to efforts to realize their visions for change. We're so excited that you're back here with us, starting the year off, right, with one of our coalition members, Valerie Slater. Please, Valerie, tell us more about you and your work and how you started your work and how you ended up here with us.
Thank you so much, Sasha. It is a great pleasure to be with Marijuana Justice this evening. And I am just excited to know that here we are, right, on the verge of the General Assembly. We're ready to get to work. It's time. How did I get started in this work? You know, even from when I was a child, I was an advocate for my peers. You know, if there was a bully that was going to bully a kid, they would have to come through me first. And as I grew, I became that listening ear to the generation coming up after me. And as a mother, my house was the place where the kids wanted to come and hang out because they knew that Miss Val was going to have something to eat. She was going to have a listening ear. You know, they were going to be able to have a good time at my house, and I was going to steer them in a right direction. And, you know, as I began to pursue my own personal path of giving back to the world professionally, at one point, I thought I was going to be a youth psychologist. And as I went through school and began to really understand the impact that the systems have on young people, I began to realize that the law was the way that I wanted to make my difference. I wanted to make sure that any law that was created was going to impact children in a positive way, and that I would be able to defend children if they ever found themselves coming into contact with the law. And so my legal career began. And I tell you, I've just been on this journey of discovery, you know, recognizing that I have a purpose and a mission, and evolving in pursuit of that mission. Who is it that I am? What is it that I do? And how do I pour all of that into making the lives of young people better? And as far as how did I come to Canada Justice? Well, you know, and it was a couple of years back when the conversation kind of began at the General Assembly about, you know, legalizing marijuana. And from the very beginning, it was as if they weren't thinking about the impact the actions were going to have on young people. And, you know, Chelsea, she reached out and said, hey, you know, do you see what's happening here? Are you, you know, is your ear to the ground on this? And I tell you, we were joined at the hip from that moment forward, because any laws that are created, we have to always look, how is it going to impact the next generation? We can never just allow laws to be created and then as an afterthought, look at what the impact on children will be. Because see, children indeed are the future. It sounds so cliche, but if we're going to rise them up to be the leaders of tomorrow, the legislators of tomorrow, you know, they're going to be the ones taking the reins. Well, let's not saddle them with criminal histories based on something that we did that supposedly was going to be moving us forward and decriminalizing and making legal a substance, a plant. So it became imperative that Rise for Youth be a part of this fight. And we continue to fight because even now, we have not quite made it to that. We haven't made it over the finish line, right? Kids are still criminalized in the legislation as it was passed this past year. So, yeah.
Yeah, and thank you for telling us your story and about all the amazing work that you are doing and also the work that you're doing with us in the coalition. And like you just mentioned, the General Assembly session does start in next week. So can you talk about some of the policy issues that are on you all's agenda for this upcoming session?
Sure, sure. So, you know, we have been working to transform juvenile justice. That's why we exist. Rise, reinvest in supportive environments for youth. And so any system that's touching a young person's life, we believe that it's got to be pouring in rather than weighing down. And what you pour in, it's got to be positive. It can't be creating a pathway towards the adult justice system. So we would like to see, one of the things that we are fighting for is the transfer of the Department of Juvenile Justice from the Secretary of Public Safety and Homeland Security and getting it transferred into the Secretary of Health and Human Resources. Every other youth serving agency in the Commonwealth is in the Health and Human Resources Secretary. That's where juvenile justice should also be. When we have conversations with the department about the services that their young folks need, number one on the list is mental health services, you know, and
Yeah.
other services that are all housed in Health and Human Resources. And currently they have to go through this interagency collaboration agreement process to get those services. If they're all under the same secretary, then all of a sudden they're just reaching out to the other folks in their own secretary, right? And if we understand that we are rehabilitating children, why wouldn't we want this agency tasked with that rehabilitation? Why wouldn't we want them housed with all of the other rehabilitative services for children? And so that's an important piece for us. We'd also like to continue pushing for our Healthy Community Secure Care legislation. That would require that facilities be no larger than 30 beds and that they be located within the communities most with the greatest number of commitments of young people from those communities. Because what we have recognized, there are very, very distinct characteristics for the communities that commit the most young people. There are communities that have higher than, their poverty rates are extremely high. The school divisions are not as well resourced as the more affluent communities, and their communities of color. And so if we know that these are the issues faced by these particular communities, we need to do all that we can to ensure resources are poured in and that they are the kinds of resources that are going to build community. And so, number one, let's start with making sure that every rehabilitative dollar that is going to be spent on the children from those communities is coming into the community so that they are able to be the ones to support their own, so that the community transforms right along with the children that are in need of supports from within it. So we're not going to give up on that. We're not going to let up on that. We're going to keep pushing. We also want to see the elimination of the valid court order exception that allows for a child who has come under the jurisdiction of the court for whatever reason. The judge is going to then put together an order that says, these are the stipulations, these are the requirements that a young person must meet in order to abide by the rule of the court. And so if a child is told you've got to listen to your parents, you've got to be in by curfew, attend school, do your work, those kinds of things, if those are written into the order of the court, then if that child violates any one of those things, and nothing that I said was a crime, right? And a status offense, it's only deemed criminal by nature of the age of the individual so you have to be under the age of 18 in order for curfew to apply to you, in order for going to school to apply to you. You've got to be under a certain age. And so these are non-criminal actions, but that can land a child in secure confinement in detention for 7 days.
Yeah.
And it's an unfortunate thing that is something that is still being used against children, even in the middle of a pandemic, right? We ought not be locking up children for non-criminal behaviors. And when we understand that punishment isn't what we ought to be doing, we ought to be rehabilitating and creating opportunities for children to be successful. Another piece of legislation that we would like to see is prohibiting police from lying to children during interrogation. So that bill has recently been passed in Ohio and in Illinois. And the wording of the bill, it says that any admission made by a young person that was based on an untrue statement made by law enforcement is not admissible in court. And we would like to see something similar. Now, we've already been having conversations with legislators, and and some legislators don't quite see the benefit of this bill. And, we're just going to have to disagree on that point. But in recent past, and it was in 2020 that House Bill 746 passed, which says that you cannot interrogate a child unless you have first contacted their parents. And so that has been in effect now for a year. And I've heard repeatedly from defense attorneys that police are not abiding by that and that they have excuses. And so we're thinking that perhaps even if we aren't able to get the complete prohibition from telling untruths to children, at least if you do not contact a parent before interrogating a child, we're hoping that those statements cannot be admissible in court because you have indeed run afoul of the law. And so that's a way that we're looking to get around, or at least to get something on the books that moves us in that direction that we can build upon in later times. And then, there are other, the use of credible messengers. We want to expand the use of credible messengers in school. And this is going to be a piece of supported legislation. It's actually the Uhuru Foundation that is going to be lead organization on that particular bill, but allowing individuals who have had their own experiences with the court system and incarceration and have now come back and they're ready to pour into the next generation and make sure that they don't make some of the same mistakes. They don't go down some of those same paths that they have traversed down, but would like to now be supports. We look at credible messengers, individuals who've had their own experiences as liaisons to other services. Because see, children are going to be much more willing to listen to folks that look like them, that understand their communities, that understand the issues that they are facing, and who are going to be able to provide not only their support, but then put the stamp on the counselor in school and say, you know what, I know counselor so-and-so, and together we can go and access these services. Because sometimes kids, they're not willing to open up to folks that, you have no commonality with me. You're not from my community. You don't know what our life is like. And here you are trying to tell me how I'm supposed to do this or that. Well, if we bring in liaisons, right? Folks who do understand, folks who are going to be that listening ear, folks who are going to be able to say, hey, you know what, get it together. Don't act like that. And that young folks are going to respect and then also respond positively. And then again, be that liaison to the other services that potentially are available to young people. And so they won't have to walk that road alone. They don't have to try to figure out all the answers for themselves. And so those are our top priorities right now. And while we definitely want to move on the marijuana piece, not sure what we're going to be able to accomplish this year, but we are going to be walking in tandem with marijuana justice as we, whatever we can get done, we're going to get done. And we're just going
I
to
know
keep
that's
our
right.
finger on that pulse. And
Mhm.
you know what? Last thing, there are going to be so many bills that we're also going to have to take the defensive posture on. Already, there are bills that are looking to roll back some of the gains that we have made. We've been able to give more authority to principals as far as what they will report to law enforcement. Well, a lot of that they're attempting now to roll back. Senate Bill 2, House Bill 4, they're basically saying misdemeanors must be reported to law enforcement. We have got to take the defense, make sure that bills that are going to take away positive steps to lessen, to shut down the school to prison pipeline. Let's not open up the pipelines. Are we kidding? Let's not start ushering kids easily and just open our arms and say, here, take our babies. Not at all. We're going to be fighting and yeah, making the gains that we can at the same time.
Wow, thank you so much for your work and also for informing us and even like myself about all the work that y'all are doing. This is incredible. And like you mentioned, with the school to prison pipeline, a lot of our youth are receiving harsher penalties than what adults even receive for some of these offenses. And then that really opens up that school to prison pipeline and leads them to a life of having a record that takes away from some of the experiences and opportunities that they can receive to actually heal their future. So it's seeming like a lot of what you're saying, like these laws are counterproductive for what our youth need. So thank you so much for sharing that. And how long have you been working on some of these proposals, the work that you've been doing? How long have y'all been bringing this forward to the General Assembly?
Yeah, so when we start talking about the healthy communities, that has been a priority for us. We started working on it in 2019 or 2018, after the closure of Beaumont, and the Department of Juvenile Justice started looking at how do we create smaller, more regionally placed facilities. We had to step up and stop the building of facilities both in Chesapeake and in Isle of Wight, supporting the communities that were saying, and for wrong reasons, there's nothing good about a not in my backyard mentality, because, that whole idea is that I don't want those kids. Well, they're our children. They're all our children.
Absolutely.
But, being able to step into communities and help with education so that you stop looking at children as threats and start looking at them as children who are in need of support and rehabilitation and services and programs that are going to help them make better choices in their lives. And so, again, interrupting the process of building in locations that had nothing to do with the communities and so far away from the communities where kids are actually coming from. When the Department of Juvenile Justice was looking at Chesapeake, it was still going to be so difficult for families on the other side of the bridge to get to see their children. Majority of kids were coming from Hampton, Norfolk, Newport News. And while Norfolk is on that side, this locality, there was no bus system. There was no place for families to stay if they were going to be staying overnight. And there was no opportunity for families to find places to eat. I mean, it literally was, and that was also true of the Isle of Wight location. And so looking at where should a facility be? Where should it be placed? It's got to be somewhere where family can access their children and not rely on the system to get them there. You cannot take full control of an entire family. We've got your kids. If you want to see them, you've got to come to us and we'll get you there. I mean, there's something inherently wrong with that idea. We have got to empower families to be supportive of themselves and of their young people, not make them so reliant on systems So again, it's been since 2018 on this particular piece of legislation, but it began with us taking trips and allowing individuals, stakeholders who would be a part of the process to come in and look at potential spaces and talk about how within communities that are committing children, this can be we can make a reality here, right? It can truly
Yeah.
be the building of communities supporting their own young people. We've got to do that. We must do that. And so we have not been wavering. We'll never waver on that, on those ideals, right? On those platforms, on those pillars of the way we see moving forward. But see, it didn't come from us. It came from community. It came from the young people. They're the ones that are saying, we want to be surrounded by our family. We want our families to be a part of our support. And community saying, we don't need systems telling us what to do. We need the resources so that we can support our own. So we have been at it for years, but we keep chipping away. And most recently, there are other things that we'll discuss a little bit, but I feel
Yeah.
like we're really making some great headway.
Thank you so much for sharing that. Y'all are doing really great work. And how has your work been? What has been the response from legislators when you educate them on the valid court order and all the other policy issues that you all are working through?
So, the valid court order exception, it's an interesting thing, right? We have some legislators that are saying, well, what else do judges have at their disposal? And the problem with that response, and I'm so grateful that there were so many legislators that took the stance that I'm about to share now. The problem with that response is you're locking up children for non-criminal behavior and saying that it is a last resort. You're locking up children for non-criminal behavior is where we need to stop. That as a last resort piece, it's almost like, but it's okay. You're locking up children for non-criminal behavior. That is the problem. That's what must be addressed. Stop locking up children for non-criminal behavior. And we're so excited that so many legislators did indeed take that same stance. Delegate Scott, he did a wonderful job of defending this bill last session, and Senator Marcy has taken it up for this session. And so we're excited to have a Senate patron on the bill, and we are looking forward to getting it passed this time around. And I have to say that regardless of how the bill fares, we will not stop until we stop locking up children for non-criminal behavior. Because at no point should we start saying to kids, we're going to punish you by putting you in jail, even when you have not broken the law. We should never say that.
Never, never. And thank you for your fight. And also thank you for informing us about how the work has been perceived in the General Assembly and some of the champions that you all have currently. We got news that you all had a huge accomplishment happening this last December, and the JLARC study report was released. So please tell us more about how that study has been perceived, and what are your initial thoughts about the study, and what has been the reaction from the public and even decision makers about this study? And also, please inform people about what JLARC is and why the study is so important to the work that you all are doing.
Sure. So first of all, JLARC, that is the Joint Legislative Audit and Review Commission. That's a mouthful, right? But they are the agency that is tasked with looking at the different agencies of our Commonwealth. And then whenever we want to know how well that agency is performing, it is JLARC then that will do the study. Or for that matter, there is a particular piece of legislation that is being considered by our legislature. And if there is any misunderstanding or disagreement on how to move forward, then often JLARC takes up the issue, takes up that particular piece of legislation, and they do a study. Matter of fact, even with the legalization of marijuana, it was JLARC that did a study on marijuana legalization. And from that study, we have been able to make such great gains. But this, in just December, they released their study because they did study on the Department of Juvenile Justice. And we were very impressed with the work that they did. They didn't pull any punches, and that's necessary, right? We have got to call out when things aren't working as they should. And what they discovered is that at every stage of juvenile justice involvement, children of color, Black kids, are 2.5 times more likely to be arrested, to be handled more harshly through the system, to end up with harsher sentences, and then to end up in the deepest end of the Department of Juvenile Justice. And so, from that study, we have been able to just kind of amplify. That's what we've been saying all along, right? We know this already. Thank you, J. Lark, for bringing to light, or shedding even more light, if you will, on these issues that we have already known to be true. But at the same time, that you aren't just holding the Department of Juvenile Justice accountable, but that you're looking at the police and saying, hey, what are you doing? That you're looking at even the prosecutorial system and the defense system and saying, hey, what's going on here? And then you're looking even at the judges and saying, what's going on with your sentencing or your handling of children of color, right? And, something else that was brought to light. In order for someone to be certified by the Virginia Indigent Defense Commission to represent youth as a court-appointed attorney, it doesn't take very much. The standard is so low, and yet there are so many nuances to defending a young person. And so while it takes so much to be certified to be a court-appointed attorney for adults, we need to flip that, or at least raise the standard, right? We need to have folks who have taken the time to understand all of the nuances of juvenile representation before they are able to represent young people. And then the standard of pay. Attorneys only get $120 to represent a young person. It doesn't matter what that case looks like. The national standard is $1,850.
Wow.
It's not even 110. It's not
Why
even
the
110.
discrepancy? Wow, okay. That's really informative. Why is that discrepancy there?
You know what? I can't tell you why the discrepancy exists. It's just that Virginia has not invested a lot of money in court-appointed attorneys. It's a miscarriage of justice, because now we have attorneys who and so let's just talk about this, right? An attorney, if you were to go to the private bar and retain an attorney, $120 could be their hourly rate. So you're basically saying, for an entire case, we're going to give you what an attorney would get paid an hour. But that is the entire case. And then what do the caseloads look like, right? And so, I mean, all of these things come into play, and it's impacting more our young people, right? Young people of color are the most impacted, because they are the ones who are indigent, who aren't able to afford an attorney. And then, so the state's only going to give them this $120, yet this attorney is supposed to mount this defense on behalf of this young person that is tantamount to what the Commonwealth would have the resources to do. So there are just so many broken places, is what is what we have discovered. So, pay folks more, require more training before they're able to take on a case, right? And then ensure that every step of the system is fair. Stop sending Black youth so easily and so readily into the jaws of the justice system without adequately supporting and making sure that they're going to have the right representation and that they're going to receive their appropriate services once they're in. And so that's just the outer shell. But then once we get into the meat of the system, they discovered also that the recidivism rate, it's not going down, it's upwards of 70%, right? And so what they realize is they have that the community placement programs, which is the closer to home, but there is no oversight of these local detention centers to ensure that they are providing appropriate services. So kids may be closer to their home, but if they aren't receiving the services that they need, you're basically just housing a child and not
Yes.
supporting them, not helping them. They aren't receiving, when they're in those CPP placements, they aren't receiving the same educational opportunities, because even the Virginia Department of Education, they haven't been doing the oversight that they previously had been doing in those community placement programs. And so basically we've just got local detention centers that are receiving funds to house kids, and those children are then being released and they haven't received what they needed to be successful. And then they end up back in the system's care.
In the same system.
So,
yeah.
I tell you.
Can
So,
you, oh, sorry, go ahead.
oh gosh, I tell you what.
Go ahead.
I'm telling you what,
I
this is
know.
a place where I could just go on a tangent, and I'm trying really hard not to, but I care about children. We must all care about our children. These are the kids with the greatest needs. They are our most vulnerable. And you're saying, well, they've committed crimes, they've caused harm. You're right, they have. And responsibility for that crime, it belongs, yes, that child must be held accountable and take responsibility, but we have a responsibility as well.
Yep.
We have a responsibility because we recognize that they are not young adult, they are not little adults, they are children, and children need structure, they need instruction, they need rehabilitation, and sometimes it's habilitation. What if it's a child who has never received an opportunity to understand the right way? Then it's up to us to show them the right way and then give them the resources so that they can still make some mistakes and bounce back from them, but that they are also able to find their positive way forward with supports. We cannot relegate children to in confinement and then set them loose in the world and say, well, I hope you learned your lesson and that you'll do better now. That's not how it works. Before I learned to walk, I fell several times, and someone held my hands until I figured out how to get my feet underneath myself. There are other things that we have all made our own mistakes, right? And imagine had we been thrown to the justice system rather than been given the opportunity to bounce back, and then been even given the bumpers and the supports necessary so that we can, kind of bump off the walls until we figured out how to make it forward. Our kids need that. And kids from vulnerable communities need even more. And until we recognize that and start treating children like children and giving them the opportunities that they need to be successful. Yeah, I mean, what are we doing? What exactly are we doing?
Yes, you make so many great points. And I'm thinking about the zero tolerance policies that are in these schools that just give our youth no chances to, like you said, make any bad decisions or be corrected in a way that doesn't completely become detrimental to their futures by excluding them from their education and placing them into detention centers where they're excluded from those resources. Can you talk a little bit about what you imagine care for youth looking like when you say mental health and a lot of these different things that youth really need attention for? Can you talk about some of your dreams for what type of programs we can offer youth instead of detention centers?
Sure. So, who we need to hear from is young people, right? When we start talking about what you need, it's a young person that will say, you know what? I was really wishing that I could learn about this or that. And so what I'm about to share, it's coming from the voices of the young folks that we work with, young folks that have been through our programming and others. And I also want to just kind of lift up some great work that I know that is happening and that is on the horizon. So our young people are always talking about making sure that the mental health providers, that they are listening to them and not just telling them how they should be, right? We've got to start with listening. We've got to start with, first of all, allowing young folks to share their lived experiences and allowing it to be a truly safe place. And don't get so hemmed up in the words that they use, right? Kids curse sometimes. Their
Yeah.
grammar may not be the best. They may even have their slang language, I mean, a whole new dialect of language that's coming from their generation. And all of that has got to be okay. We have got to
Yeah.
normalize children being children. That's not to say that we don't teach them and instruct them and give them the tools to operate within other environments, but let's normalize theirs first. Let's let them know that it's okay to be you. And then once we start understanding who they are and the traumas that they have experienced, that we then begin to bring in around them folks who have either lived those same experiences or who have been trained and are able to help to move past, to work through and move past. And then we have got to start understanding what are the desires of young people's hearts. What do they see themselves? What are they passionate about? Because I'm gonna tell you what, if you're passionate about something, you'll go after it. And so we've got to stop telling kids, we've got these 5 opportunities for employment for you. And you can pick one of these 5 and that's it. No, let's start figuring out what the passions are and then create pathways to their passion. We've
Right.
got to start
Right.
being as innovative as they are. And while
Right.
they are being creative and coming up with ways to many times get in trouble, can we be just as innovative in ways to find them the pathway to that passion without the trouble? Let's find the mentors.
Exactly.
Let's find those folks who are doing that work and bring
Yeah.
them into the picture. And
Yeah.
and I also want to just share that, coming up, there is I don't know if y'all have heard of the Hive, but performance
Yes,
statistics,
I
yeah, yeah,
have.
yeah.
Yes.
And
Yes.
Gina
They're a great
Lyles,
organization.
she is the executive director over at the Hive. And right
Mhm.
now, they're working to create something that we have been talking about healthy community secure care. Well, they are
Right.
building
Yes,
a model. They're
they
building the
are.
model. So
Yep.
it's
Yeah.
time for legislation to meet reality. And so here come these, we're trying to make it the law and they're building the reality. And so it is time for us to, again, listen to young people, understand where they're coming from, create for them the pathway to their passion, right? We launched our Youth Development Academy this past year, and it was all about bringing in all of these folks that are doing the work to make a better world for our young people. And while they are learning advocacy from all of these different angles, we're then creating the opportunity for them to pick, okay, did you see something that aligns with your goals, your vision? Well, here's a 6-month paid internship with that organization so that you can now explore that more deeply. We've got young folks that are now working at East End Boxing. We've got young folks working at Cadence Theater Company. We've got young folks working at the American or the Virginia Civil War Museum. These are young folks who are now exploring these things that they have passions about, and
Yeah.
their dreams are being expanded. And we're asking,
Yeah.
not just the 6-month paid internship, but let's look at full-time employment if this is something that you want to do with your life. We've got young folks that are now going to be bringing back some of those skills and talent. We've got young folks who are interning with Rise for Youth. What? Yes, right? So how exciting is that?
Yeah.
Young people
It
are
is.
doing the dream, right? They're living the passion. They aren't just hearing about it. And so that's what it's got to be. We have got
Mm.
to show young people beyond their community, beyond their struggles, show them that life is bigger than the struggle. And yes, there may be somebody trying to get you to do this and that on the corner, or trying to encourage you to do something that will land you in trouble, but there are positive pathways and we are going to continue to create them for you. And so, yeah, that's what I would say.
Thank you, Valerie. Thank you so much. And thank you for also lifting the Hive movement. That I am aware of that organization as well. And I really appreciate the approach that they have, this holistic approach to youth and overcoming issues and being a part of a system that added more trauma to their already lived experience. And I really appreciate you listening. That are there any other organizations that you are working with that has these approaches that you appreciate? And also, can you talk about some of the programs? I know you mentioned some of the jobs that youth are now working. Are there other programs that you all have with Rise for Youth, or any other organizations, programs that you will gear youth to?
Sure.
In that same light. Yeah.
So Rise for Youth, we're actually going to be hosting an open house for our for young people to join, because we have our Youth for Rise, and that is young people who are interested in being advocates. Do you want to be a part of changing the systems that have so much custody and control over your life? And how do you do that? You jump in and you become a part of organizations that are, on the front line and doing the work. And we absolutely are. So on the 26th, you'll get a flyer that I'll share soon. It's still in production.
Yay.
But yeah, we're going to be opening our doors so that we can get more young people in. Our Youth Development Academy Year 2 will be launching soon. We'll be accepting applications as well for that. And then we also partner with Initiatives of Change. We partner with Dr. Ram Bhagat and his organization. We partner with Abu Unity over in the 757, and with Community 50/50. Yeah, I mean, there are so many folks out there doing such great work. And so, and for anyone that I did not mention, please charge it to my head, not my heart. I love the work that you do. And, I wish I had a list in front of me, but yeah, those are all some groups that I would highly recommend. The We Are program, League for Safer Streets, those are programs that I know doing great work. The Carol Adams Foundation, great work is being done. And when we move in synergy, we can create the net that leaves no child behind. We say, wait, cast a large net so that you might pull in many. That's what we've got to do. But I don't want to just pull in many. I don't want to miss a one. And so we need every one of these organizations doing all of this great work, because it takes all of us. There is no shortage of kids who need support. There is no shortage. And for the young people that may be involved in this and that, good. Get involved in this and that and the other is what I would say. The Virginia Student Power Network. I'm going to tell you what, the Excel, Virginia Excel. So just to name just a few spaces where kids can get involved, can be connected. I know that there is a Petersburg group of young folks that we have been connecting with as well. And, it is my dream that we literally we become this network that, I mean, literally, Gina, hey, Val, such and such. You know what, Gina, such and such. I'm sending this young person your way. Just sending kids wherever that the resources that are going to be most impactful for their life, wherever those resources are, send that child that way. Hurry up and do it. Don't hesitate, because we can't allow children to fall through the cracks because we're too busy wanting to be the answer, right? So, yeah.
Yes. Thank you so much. So what are some final words you would like to say to close up your portion before we ask the audience if they have any questions? Could you leave us with some final, what do you want us to remember about this conversation?
I want us to remember that, how are the children ought to be how we gauge our society. That's already the way it's done in some communities in Africa. And I am saying that here in Virginia, ask the question, how are the children? And until we're able to say all the children are well, all is not well in Virginia. So that's what I would like to leave everyone.
Yes. Let's see if the audience has any questions. They have been real active in the chat, so I'm sure some people have some questions. Let's see. And in the meantime, thank you so much, Valerie. This has been a really informative conversation. We have a question. For someone who isn't involved, how would you suggest one get started? And I assume in advocacy for youth.
I would say, first of all, go to riseforyouth.org and follow us on social media. I didn't say that, but please do, please. If you aren't signed up, please sign up. And I have to apologize. I have not been the best at getting our newsletter out. We are a small crew. We're small but mighty, 4 folks, but we're out here in the streets getting the work done. But sign up to get our updates. The General Assembly session is about to hit, and I will be sending out so much information on how bills are doing and how you can be involved. Follow us on social media, because that's always going to tell you what's going on. We just recently took, so we work our kids hard all year long. We do. We have them on panels. We have them at the GA. We have them doing all kinds of things, right? They launched a whole Juneteenth event and had a block party this year. Those young people planned that whole thing themselves. But then we also believe that they need to rest and play hard. So we took them to Florida for a week. The week before Christmas, we take our young people away for a retreat. We took them and put them up in a 13,000 square foot mansion in Florida and let them just have the time of their life, right? Because they need that. If you're going to work hard, you got to play hard, right? And so we are letting children see that there is fruit from your labor. There is a yield from there's an outcome and a yield from when you have plowed the field, you're going to yield a harvest. And so, and I'm taking them skiing next year. So we're going to go to Colorado next year. Well, actually it's this year, this December. So yeah, go to our website, sign up, go to our social media, follow us. It is important to know what's going on with young people and organizations that are standing up for young people. If you are someone that has a service that you can present, then you know what? Share that as well. Go to info@Rise for Youth. Send me an email. I am interested in hearing what you've got. The Hive movement is just kicking off. Go to their website, figure out how to get connected, get involved. It takes the whole village. We are the village, and we must all look at every child as our own, because they are ours. They are our responsibility.
Thank you so much. I have chills. Thank you. We have another question in the chat. What is the biggest resistance you see when it comes to helping youth? Is it politically or with the youth themselves?
Okay, so I'm going to say it's a both and. I'm going to say it's a both and because young people that have been deprived for long periods of time, right? They build up their own walls and resistances to anyone who is trying to come in, because they're trying to figure out, what's your angle? What do you want from me? Right? How are you going to come down on me? Right? If I've been put out of school, you didn't want me there anyway, and then going back, if you've been kind of labeled, then they're constantly targeting you and looking at you. And so that child begins to feel like, you want to see you think I'm gonna be bad? Well, let me show you bad, right? And so sometimes you have to break through those barriers and just consistently be there. Just be there. Be the one who is, I'm gonna pick you up. It's 1:30 in the morning. Yeah, I'm still gonna send you that lift to pick you up and get you to where you need to be. Not because I'm, just a pushover and gonna always do whatever any child asks of me, but because I've got to constantly show you that, yes, I do care. Yes, I'm going to be there. And then when we look at the political system, when we look at our legislature, yes, you're tasked with public safety, right? Keeping everyone safe, but understanding that keeping everyone safe means those most vulnerable ones, create a safe space for them so that they don't feel as if pushing back, lashing out is their only response. And so while you're trying to wrap your arms around the young people, you're trying to open the eyes of the legislature. And so you've got this interesting balancing act going on, but that's why you need a good team. You need those that it is their purpose is to wrap around young people and to show them the love and the support. And yeah, I might get a call, hey, Ms. Val, I need such and such and such and such for so-and-so. Okay, I got that. But then we also have the legislative side of Amanda, my legislative coordinator, and myself. We're the ones who understand the language, and we're able to go into the legislature and translate perhaps what this child has experienced into something that the legislators can hear and understand. Hey, so maybe I need to change the way I'm thinking about these kids and put into place the laws that are going to protect them rather than criminalize them.
Wow. Wow. You're leaving me with chills. Like, your passion for youth is just radiating through this webinar. And I'm sure everyone else can. I see in the chat other people are so moved by the work that you all are doing. And it's truly inspiring. And thank you for being a champion for youth. We need it. Our babies need it. And like you said, they are our future. And how we care for them is eventually it represents how we care for ourselves as a society, is a pure reflection of that. So thank you again so much for your work. And thank you for joining us today. This was a great way to start the year for our Marijuana Monthlies, our special guest, Valerie Slater. This has been a great conversation, and we'll leave you with all of our social media handles in the chat. You can see how you can access Rise for Youth, and stay tuned about some of the programs that Valerie mentioned. And also with Marijuana Justice and Rise for Youth, our policy goals and agenda for this upcoming General Assembly. You can see what we are working on and stay connected about updates for our next Marijuana Monthly. Thank you all so much. It has been a pleasure, and we will see y'all next month.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.